Masechet Baba Mesia Daf Pe Bet. The Mishnah taught Hilval al Mashkon Shomer Sachar. If someone lends money and takes a collateral, so the lender is holding on to the collateral item, and while he has it, he's considered a Shomer Sachar. It means he's going to be liable for Geneva V'Aveda, same as a Shomer Sachar. That was the opinion of Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda disagreed, and he says there's a distinction between lending money and produce. If he lends money and takes a mashkon, then he is a shomer chinam according to the Yehuda. But he agrees with Tanakama, if he lends out produce and takes a collateral, then he's a shomer sachar. The reason for the difference is that produce will go bad if you just leave it. Therefore, the lender who has this produce, and obviously he doesn't need it because he can lend it out. If he just keeps it, it's going to go bad. So he is actually happy. He gets a benefit by lending it out. So even though for free, not with interest. So he lends it out, and now, since he gets that benefit, when he watches the collateral item, he's a shomer sachar because he is getting benefit that later on he'll get fresh produce back, and then he'll need it when he needs it. Which is different from money. Money, if he just keeps it in his own pocket, it won't go bad. So he's lending it out for free, a free loan. That's very nice of him. He's holding on to the collateral without any benefit, so therefore a shomer chinam. Okay, lema matnitin de la Rabbi Eliezer. We propose that our Mishnah cannot be accorded with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer in the following baraita. Tanya. Hamavet chabero ala mashkon v'avad mashkon yishaba v'yitol me'otav divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Someone who lends money and takes a collateral and he loses the collateral. So the let's say it's geneva v'aveda, not negligent. So all the lender has to do is swear that he was not negligent, and he can still collect the rest of the loan according to the Rabbi Eliezer. We see according to the Rabbi Eliezer that someone who lends money with a collateral, that lender is considered a shomer chinam. That's why he does not have to pay. Sorry, I lost your collateral. I was like a shomer chinam. I swear I wasn't negligent. Okay, that's it. Too bad for your collateral. You still have to pay up the loan. So that's the challenge. Our Mishnah says the lender who lends has the collateral is a shomer sachar and would have to pay. Rabbi Eliezer says he's a shomer chinam. Now we finish off the braita. Rabbi Akiva Omer Yachol Omar Lo Kelum Vitani Ela La Mashkon Avad Mashkon Avdu Ma'otecha Aval Hilvau Elef Zuz Bishtar V'Neach Lo Mashkon Alehem Dibra Kol Avad Mashkon Avdu Ma'otav. Rabbi Akiva says that the borrower who gave him the collateral can say, why did you agree to lend me money? Was it not because I gave you the collateral? You were relying on the collateral to help you collect the loan, and therefore you lost the collateral. Now you lost the money. The collateral, by definition, well, not by definition, because Rabbi Eliezer disagrees. Rabbi Eliezer thinks that the collateral is there just as proof that there was a loan. It's not meant to use to actually collect the debt. Just in case, you come and say, hey, where's my money? And you say, what are you talking about? I never borrowed money from you. He says, look, I have your collateral. See, it's proof of the loan, not a means to collect the loan, according to Rabbi Eliezer. Therefore, if it gets lost, it's gone. Too bad, you still have to pay. According to Rabbi Akiva, the collateral is the means of collecting the loan, right? They did it at the time of the loan because the lender is relying on the collateral. In case you don't pay, I will keep the collateral. So the collateral is, in fact, a payment. It's an early payment, and you get the collateral back if you actually give money payments. That's fine. But if you lose the collateral, then that's it. The borrower says, you lost my collateral, I don't have to pay you. So you see, Rabbi Akiva says that the lender is like a shomer sachar, in fact. Okay, because he is responsible. So, however, everyone agrees if he borrowed 1,000 zuz and they had a contract, they wrote it down in a contract, and he also left a mashkon, then everybody would agree that if you lose the mashkon, you also lose the money. Why? Even Rabbi Eliezer would agree, because according to Rabbi Eliezer, up here, the mashkon is there as proof. But if you have a contract, then the contract is proof of the loan. So if you already have a contract as proof of the loan, you would not need the collateral to be proof of the loan. So therefore, if you already have a contract and you also have a mashkon, then it's evident that the mashkon is a means of collecting the money. And since it's parallel to the money, it's like a payment. So if the lender loses the collateral, then he cannot collect the money anymore. So even Rabbi Eliezer would agree in that case. Okay, so back to our question. We're going to come back to Rabbi Akiva later, but so far we have the Mishnah says that the lender holding a collateral is a shomer sachar, and Rabbi Eliezer says in the standard case without a shtad, he is a shomer chinam. So it must be that this is inconsistent with Rabbi Eliezer, and we answer afilu tema Rabbi Eliezer v'la kashya kan shemishkeno b'shat halva'ato kan shemishkeno shelo b'shat halva'ato. We can reconcile the Mishnah also with Rabbi Eliezer, and we say as follows: in the Baraita of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, where they disagree, that was talking about a case where the borrower gave the collateral at the time of the loan. Since he gave it at the time of the loan, obviously, he wants it to be proof of the loan. That's where it's considered shomer chinam, right? Make sure here, look, the lender says, give me a collateral so I have proof for the loan. However, in the Mishnah, that's talking about a case where he takes the collateral not at the time of the loan. Later on, he says, oh, listen, you know what? Can you have collateral? And that he wants it because he wants to be able to collect the money with using the collateral. The borrower would be okay with it. He says, okay, fine, take the collateral. I'm going to have to pay anyway. So you want the collateral now? All right, in case I don't pay, you keep the collateral. So if it's after the time, if the collateral is given after the time of the loan, then everybody would agree, to be Eliezer also would agree that is a means of collection, not as a means of proof. If it's a means of collection, then that's like a shomer sachar. The lender is responsible if it gets lost or stolen. So we can answer it that way. But no, the problem is, V'ha edi v'edi, hilvau ala mashkon, where it's katane. Both the Braita and the Mishnah uses the same language. He lent him on collateral, and that indicates that it was given at the time of the loan, right? That was part of the deal. I'll lend you money, but you have to give me collateral. And so we cannot make this distinction. It doesn't fit with the words. So second try. Ela lakasha. Kan shelvahu ma'ot, kan shelvahu perot. We could say as follows. The Braita, where Rabbi Eliezer said his law, that was talking about where he lends money and he takes the collateral. So in that case, we see it only as proof. Whereas the Mishnah is talking about a case where the lender lends out produce. If he's lending out produce, then he has a benefit, which is this produce that will go bad if he just leaves it in his house, and he doesn't need it right now, so he doesn't want it to go bad, so he lends it out, and then a month later, when he will want produce, he gets fresh produce back. And so since he gets a benefit, so now he's a shomer sachar, and even Rabbi Eliezer would agree with that. So that way we can reconcile us talking about two different things. But then we bring up our problem. It doesn't fit with the words of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda omer, hilvau ma'ot shomer chinam, hilvau perot shomer sachar, beklal del Tanakama la shani le. The continuation of the Braita says that was Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda says that there's a distinction. If he lent out money and took a collateral, the lender is a shomer chinam. If he lent out produce and took collateral, then the lender is a shomer sachar. So that means only the Yehuda makes a distinction. Tanakama does not make a distinction. So if Tanakama does not make a distinction between them, then this answer is no good. Our Mishnah has to be valid. And the Tanakama is saying his law in both the cases of money or produce. So we answer, Kula Rabbi Yehuda hi v'chasur mechasra v'achi katani, heval lo mashkon shomer sachar, v'medrim omerim sheval perot, hilval ma'ot shomer chinam, she Rabbi Yehuda omer, hilval ma'ot shomer chinam, hilval perot shomer sachar. We can say that our entire Mishnah is opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. There's no distinction between Tanakama and the Rabbi Yehuda. And you have to add in some words. It's missing some words, and here's how you should read or how you should understand the Mishnah. If he someone lent money to someone with a tikka collateral. He is a shomer sachar. When is that true? He's a shomer sachar only if he lent him produce. But if he lent him money, he would be a shomer chinam. For the Yehuda makes that distinction. If he lent money, he's shomer chinam. If he lent produce, he's shomer sachar. And if the entire Mishnah, there is no separate Tanakama, the entire Mishnah is Yehuda, then we can make this distinction that the Mishnah agrees. Rabbi Yehuda was talking about when he lends money. Really, Eliezer was talking about when he lends money, and this is shomer chinam. And in fact, the Mishnah would agree if he lends money, he is a shomer chinam, but produce and a shomer sachar. So now that we solved the Mishnah and said, look, it can be according to Rabbi Eliezer, we just create a new problem on the other side, that the Mishnah cannot be the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. He's the one that said that when you lend out money, and so what are you talking about? The Braita is talking about money, right? That's what we just said. Okay, so we're talking about lending out cash, and he takes a collateral, according to Rabbi Akiva, that is used for collection, and therefore he's responsible like a shomer sachar. So now you have a problem that Rabbi Akiva does not fit with the Mishnah. So you solve the issue for Rabbi Eliezer, but create a new problem that now the Mishnah cannot be Rabbi Akiva. So we go back to the drawing board and say, yeah, it's better to say that the Mishnah is like Rabbi Akiva. That's a nice, easy, straightforward reading. You don't have to change any words, add any words, and the Mishnah does not follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, now that we mentioned this machloket between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, we're going to propose three different ways of understanding it. Perhaps we're talking about a case where the collateral is worth less than the value of the loan. The loan was $1,000 and the collateral is only worth $100. And if so, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva would be arguing about on the principle that Shemuel said. De'amar Shemuel, Haiman de'osfe alfazu zel chabreva nachle kata de magala ilavaihu. Abad kata de magala abdu alfazu ze. Shemuel said that someone lends 1,000 azuz to his friend, and the collateral is simply the handle of a sickle, a little piece of a stick of wood, which is not worth very much. If he loses the collateral, then he loses the entire loan. Okay, so that's what Shemuel said. So let's suggest that we're talking about this case here in this Baraita as well, and Rabbi Akiva would agree with the ruling of Shemuel, since the collateral, although it was not worth as much as the loan, but nevertheless this was the means of collecting, and if you lost that collateral, that's it, you lose the loan altogether, even though it's actually worth more. So Rabbi Akiva would be in agreement with Shemuel. Really, he's before, so Shemuel was in agreement with Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Eliezer would disagree and say, no, this is just a proof, but if you lose it, so you still can collect the money. And so we reject this. No, it could very likely be that if the case was that the mashkon is worth less than the amount of the loan, in fact, everybody would disagree with Shemuel, right? It's just a small amount of money. Why should you lose the entire amount of the loan just because you lost the collateral? So nobody would agree. And this machloket is not about that case. And so our Baraita is talking about a case where the collateral is worth the same as the amount of the loan. And here's the second proposal of how to understand the principle underlying their machloket. They're arguing about what Rabbi Yitzchak says. What does he say? Damar Rabbi Yitzchak, minayin lebal chov shekoneh mashkon shene'emar ulcha tiyeh tzedakah imeno koneh mashkon tzedakah minaleh. Rabbi Yitzchak says that the lender acquires the collateral. How do you know that? Because Pasuk says that if someone lends money to a poor person and he takes the poor person's pajamas as collateral, then he should return the pajamas every night so that the poor person has what to put on when he's sleeping. And the pasuk ends and says, and this will be considered tzedakah, a righteous act for you to do. Now, why would it be considered a righteous act to give it to him? Because that means that the lender acquires it, and he doesn't have to give it, but this is the right thing to do, to give it to him every night. If it really belonged to the borrower, then it would not be be called tzedakah. It's his, so he deserves to use it. So Rabbi Yitzchak learns from this that this is an act of charity. That means it's yours. It means it's the lender's. The collateral belongs to the lender. Mikan lebal chov shekoneh mashkon. Okay, and so this would be the object of the machloket between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Akiva would agree with Rabbi Yitzchak and say that since the lender acquires the item, so if he loses it, he's losing his own item. And so that's it. He lost out the whole thing, and he can no longer collect the loan. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer says that the lender does not acquire the item. He's simply watching it on behalf of the borrower, and as a watchman, he's a shomer chinam. And so he says, oh, sorry, I lost it. I swear I wasn't negligent, and he can still collect the rest of the loan. Now we reject this as well. Hold on. Rabbi Yitzchak only said this halacha when someone gave the borrower gave the collateral later, after the time of the loan. So that means that it was not considered just as proof, but it really was I'm giving this to you as a means of collection. And that's when the lender acquires it. But if he gave it to him at the time of the loan, so did Rabbi Yitzchak say this? Not necessarily, because if you give it at the time of the loan, it could be just a proof and not a means of collection, and therefore the lender does not fully acquire it. So rather we conclude that it could very well be that if the collateral was given after the time of the loan, then everybody would agree with Rabbi Yitzchak, even Rabbi Eliezer would agree. And instead, we propose a third interpretation, that we're talking about a case where the collateral was in fact given at the time of the loan, and the machloket is about a watchman over a lost item. In other words, someone finds a lost item and he's safeguarding it until the owner comes around and he's able to identify him. That's what the machloket in the Braita is about. Ti'itmar. Shomer Aveda, Rabba Amar ke Shomer Chinam. Rav Yosef Amar ke Shomer Sachar. Now there is a machloket Amoraim about that very case. Someone finds an item and he's safeguarding it. So what kind of Shomer is he? Rabba says, well, he's doing it for free, right? The owner of the item, he doesn't even know who he is. He didn't pay him. He's not going to pay him. So he is not so responsible. He's a Shomer Chinam. Rav Yosef, however, says like a Shomer Sachar. Well, what gain is he getting from watching the item? Rav Yosef explains elsewhere in Masechet Sukkah that since he is involved in one mitzvah, ha'osek b'mitzvah patur min hamitzvah, so he does not have to perform another mitzvah. For example, if a poor person would come, then he could say, listen, I'm busy, I'm safeguarding this lost item for this person, so he can save a quarter that he would normally give to the poor person. So now he saves that money because he's involved in one mitzvah. He doesn't have to give that charity. So for the value of not having to give that quarter to the poor person, he is a shomer sachar according to Rav Yosef. So le'emad Rav Yosef tana'ehi. So let's propose that the opinion of Rav Yosef is subject to the machloket between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. The assumption is that everybody would agree that Rabba's opinion is subject to a machloket, because he says shomer chinam, so that would make sense only according to Rabbi Eliezer, but there would be no way to interpret Rabbi Akiva in that regard. The assumption being, if Rabbi Akiva would say that someone who holds a collateral for a loan is a shomer sachar because he's doing a mitzvah and he would not have to give charity to a poor person, if that's true for someone who lends out money, then it's certainly true for someone who finds a lost item and is returning it. That's certainly a mitzvah and would not have to give charity, and would be the same thing. And therefore, there would be no way to reconcile Rabbi Akiva with Rabbah. So Rabbah would be only the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. But how about Rav Yosef? Should we assume that Rav Yosef is also subject to a machloket Tanaim? Lema Rav Yosef Tanaihi. Should we assume that Rav Yosef, who says Shomer Sachar, because of his logic that you're doing a mitzvah, so that you don't have to give charity to a poor person, that would be in agreement with Rabbi Akiva, who also says regarding a loan, that's the mitzvah too, and so that is considered Shomer Sachar. He's getting reward for doing a mitzvah, so therefore he's a Shomer Sachar. But Rabbi Eliezer, who disagrees with Rabbi Akiva regarding a loan, would disagree also regarding watching a lost item, and he would not consider that benefit, that you don't have to do a different mitzvah to be considerable benefit. What are the chances that a poor person will come? Maybe he won't come, and so he doesn't consider that to be reward, and therefore shomer chinam, and he would disagree in the case of a lost item as well. Should we say that? And we answer, lo b'shomer avedah dekula amait lehu Rav Yosef. No, it could very well be that in the case of someone who's watching a lost item, we consider that to be a mitzvah, and one sekva mitzvah, patur min mitzvah, and even Rabbi Eliezer would agree with this logic, and therefore it would be a shomer sachar in the case of a lost item. Now, what about a loan? How come Rabbi Eliezer in our baraita says that if you're giving a loan, isn't that also a mitzvah? And so it should be considered that you're benefiting because you have a mitzvah, and be a shomer sachar. V'hacha be'malveh sarich lemashkon kami palge. Oh, our baraita is talking about a case where the lender needs to use that item that's a collateral. The collateral happens to be a lawnmower, and his lawn is too high, and he actually can use the lawnmower. And so if he lent out $1,000, and so he'll take the lawnmower as a collateral, the lender will use the lawnmower. Let's say that would cost, that would be $10 a day, and he'll deduct that amount of lawnmower rental from the amount of the loan. Otherwise, it would be interest. And so that's the benefit that's happening here, that he's getting. So, mor sabar mitzvah ka'abid shehilvahu vare shomer sachar, umor la masavar la mitzvah ka'abid shelahanato mitkaven vare shomer chinam. So, in this machloket, Rabbi Akiva says that he is doing a mitzvah. And since he's doing a mitzvah, patur min mitzvah, and therefore he's considered shomer sachar, and that explains Rabbi Akiva here, and over there he agrees with Rav Yosef. Umar Sabad, but Rabbi Eliezer says, no, in this case he's not doing it for the sake of a mitzvah. He's doing it for his own benefit because he needs a lawnmower. So basically it's like he's renting it. It just happens to be that he's paying it all up front. He's giving $1,000 up front, and then he will rent out the lawnmower for as long as he needs it, and then they'll settle up the rest at the end. So since he's doing it for his own benefit, so that he's shomer chinam. He gets the benefit of using the lawnmower, but he also that balances out the mitzvah that he's doing, and the fact that he's patur min mitzvah, and therefore, since it all balances out, it becomes a shomer chinam, and so we end up with this being the explanation of that baraita. Lastly, Abba Shaul Omer, Motal Adam laskir mashkono shel ani liot pochet veholech. Abba Shaul says that if someone lends money to a poor person, and the poor person gives them a hammer, so the lender can rent out the hammer, let's say for $10 a day, and he deducts that amount from the loan because that will help out the poor person. Even though generally, if you're watching something, you can't just lend it out, but you're doing it on behalf of the poor person who's borrowing, so that's good. Amar Rav Chanan bar Ameh, Amar Shemuel halacha ki Abba Shaul. Shemuel says we follow this opinion for the halacha. Ve'af Abba Shaul lo amar ela b'marav fasal v'kardom hoil v'nafish agraihu v'zutar pachtaihu. However, even Abba Shaul only said that this halakha is true regarding a hoe, a chisel, an axe, because in these cases, the rent that one pays is a lot, and the depreciation on the tool is small, so it's worthwhile. But if it's an item that's going to be something that you can only use a few times, and then it ruins, it depreciates a lot, then the lender should not lend it out and then make it depreciate. And it's only especially if it's only going to get a little bit of rent, then it's not worth it for the poor person. So only in these items can the lender rent it out to get a significant amount of rent and relatively small amount of depreciation. And now the last Mishnah of the Perek, Kama'avir Chavit Makom Makom Mushvara, Ben Shomer Chinam, Ben Shomer Sachar, Ishava. A porter is hired to transfer a barrel from one place to another, and on the way he breaks it. He trips and falls while he's carrying it, and the item falls and it smashes. Now, it doesn't matter whether he is a shomer chinam or a shomer sachar. He's not getting paid, or he is getting paid to watch over it and to transport it. All he has to do is make a vow that he was not negligent. He wasn't texting while carrying it, while walking. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't drunk. And then he does not have to pay. Now, this is surprising because we understand the shomer chinam, in any case of geneva va'aveda, right, losing an item or causing it a loss, he would just have to make a vow. But a shomer sachar, why would he only have to make a vow and not have to pay? So evidently the author of this Mishnah is considering someone who trips and falls and then causes something to break to be honest. A person does not want to trip and fall, so obviously if he fell, then he is something out of his control. He just tripped. And so therefore even the shomer sachar, in the case of honest, does not have to pay. All right, Gemara will discuss that point further. Rabbi Eliezer omer, ze vaze yishava, v'tamea ani im yocholin ze vaze lishava. Rabbi Eliezer says, listen, I heard this tradition also, that both the shomer chinam and the shomer sachar just take a vow and don't have to pay. However, I am in wonder whether that's true, and how if you can conflate and say shomer chinam and shomer sachar would have the same law, and both of them just have to make a vow and do not have to pay. Gemara will elaborate on why Rabbi Eliezer is in wonderment about this. Now we quote a Braita that expands on the Mishnah. Tenor Banan. Hamabir chavit lechavero mimakom lemakom ushvara ben shomer chinam ben shomer sachar yishava dibre Rabbi Meir. So the beginning is the same. A porter is moving something for someone else. It actually explains a little better. Lechavero, for someone else, from one place to another, and it doesn't matter whether he is a shomer chinam or shomer sachar. He just has to make a vow, and this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. So now we learn that while the Tanakama, who is anonymous here, is in fact Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda omer shomer chinam yishaban ose sachar yishalem. Rabbi Yehuda, this makes sense. A shomer chinam, he can make a vow and does not have to pay, but a shomer sachar will have to pay. So evidently, as we'll see, Rabbi Yehuda does not think that tripping is considered honest. It means you were negligent. You should have watched where you're going more carefully. Rabbi Eliezer omer ze vaze yishava v'tamei im yicholin ze vaze lishava. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, I heard the same tradition as before, but I am in wonderment about it. All right, let's examine all these opinions. So it seems from the Mishnah that according to the Rabbi Meir, who is also the Tanakama, someone who stumbles is not considered negligent, it's honest. And that's why it says, even if he's a shomer sachar, he does not have to pay. V'hatanya nishbara kado v'lo silko nafla gemalo v'lo ha'amida Rabbi Meir mechaya behezekan hachamim omrim patu b'dinei shamayim v'chaya b'dinei adam v'chaya b'dinei shamayim v'kamalan deminitkal poshea pelige. How could you say that Rabbi Meir thinks that stumbling is not considered negligence? Because look, we have a Braita that says if someone's walking in the street and his pitcher, he dropped it, he stumbled and he was carrying a pitcher and the pitcher broke, and now there's causes a hazard for other people that are walking by and can slip on the shards or slip on the liquid, and he didn't clean it up. Or if he was walking and he tripped and that caused his camel to trip and he did not stand the camel up right away and someone came and was walking by and tripped on the camel. In these cases, Bimia says that this guy who tripped is liable. Hachamim say he is not liable in the human court, but he is liable in heavenly court. Okay, we're more interested in the human court here. Now, what is the machloka between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim? When we analyzed this back in Baba Kama, we concluded that we're talking about whether someone who trips is considered negligent, and while Chachamim say he's not negligent, he tripped, what can he do? And so now this happened, as a result of him tripping, now there's a stumbling block in the way. It's not his fault because he was anus. However, Rabbi Meir considers it his fault. He should have watched where he was going. He was maybe talking to someone, texting while he was walking, and that's why he tripped. And so he is liable. So here we see that in this Baraita, Rabbi Meir considers someone who stumbles to be negligent, whereas in our Mishnah and the Baraita that elaborates on our Mishnah that says Tanakh Rabbi Meir, we see that he thinks that someone who stumbles is considered beyond his control and not negligent. Amar Rabbi Elazar Tabra Misha Shanazo Lo Shanazo. Rabbi Elazar says, in fact, you have to break these two sources apart, and the one who taught the Mishnah is not the same as the person who taught the Baraita. In fact, the Mishnah and the Baraita have two different opinions about what Rabbi Meir thought. The Mishnah thinks that according to Rabbi Meir, stumbling is considered beyond one's control, is not negligent, and the author of this Baraita thinks that according to Rabbi Meir, stumbling is negligence. So that's the answer to that. Now let's explain Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Shomer chinam yishaba noseh sachar yeshalem ha ki dineh v'ha ki dineh. Rabbi Yehuda comes and says, if the porter is like a shomer chinam, then he vows and does not have to pay. And if he is paid, so then he's noseh sachar, and then he has to pay. And this is according to their normal laws. If there's a case of geneva va'aveda, not in the extreme cases that it's honest. If it's honest, that's like an armed robber. Well, then even the noseh sachar would not have to pay. And we're not talking about where someone's completely negligent and just leaves something out, nobody's watching it or puts it in a dangerous place. Well, then in that case, even the shomer chinam would be liable. We're talking about a normal case where the person was not negligent, but it was also not honest. So it was not something totally beyond their control. In which case, a shomer chinam vows and does not pay, and the noseh sachar, he pays. So that's why he says the same thing. If you're walking along and you trip and break the jug that you're carrying, so it falls into that regular category of geneva va'aveda. And then Vatar Rabbi Eliezer memar in Gemara Rabbi Meir. Then Rabbi Eliezer comes and says, listen, I heard a tradition also just like Rabbi Meir. However, I have a problem with it. Umihu tameani im yecholin ze vazeh li shabbat. But Rabbi Eliezer, he would agree with Rabbi Yehuda against Rabbi Meir. Right? How could it be that both can take a vow and not pay? He's going to have a series of objections. I understand shomer chinam. He makes a vow that he was not negligent. He wasn't texting. He wasn't doing something else while carrying this in a way that would be totally negligent. Okay, so he makes a vow. Ela shomer sachar amay mishteba kila pasha name shelume ba'eh. But shomer sachar, how can he make a vow? Even if he was not totally negligent, even just doing the normal job, he still has to pay. That's the law of shomer sachar. So he should have to pay as long as it's not totally honest. And so this is not honest. You have to be more careful and not trip. ואפילו שומר חינם נמה, התנא במקום מדרון שלא במקום מדרון, ממסד משתבע דלה פשע בה, and I even have a problem of shomer chinam. I can accept that the shomer chinam can say, listen, I was not negligent, I tried my best not to drop it, but I slipped. That would make sense if he's going on an incline, he's going up or down. It's harder to find your step. It's easier to fall on an incline, right? I was trying, but I slipped. So that's why I was not negligent. But if it's a flat plane, then can he say, oh, I was not negligent? You don't know how to walk straight on a regular line. You call yourself a porter, right? You must be really totally negligent, not looking where you're going, to just trip on a flat surface. And therefore, even the shomer chinam should have to pay. And even if it's a hill, fine. I understand that shomer chinam can make a vow. Listen, I was doing my best. I was not negligent. I was watching where I was going, and still I fell. Fine. Then he can make a vow. and not pay if there's no further proof. But if there is proof, then let him bring proof. Like if there are witnesses, well, then let the witnesses come and testify that he wasn't doing other things. He wasn't eating a sandwich or ice cream cone while he was walking. He was really watching where he was going, and only then he could make a vow and not pay. Tanya isi ben Yehuda omer en ro'eh shevat Hashem tiyeh ben shenehem hayesh ro'eh yavi re'aya v'yipater. After all, isi ben Yehuda says regarding the shomer chinam, only if there's no one who saw anything, then he can make a vow and not pay. But that means if there is other testimony, if there are people that saw it and can be and testify about it, then he has to bring proof. And so, if there were witnesses, then also the shomer chinam would not be able to simply testify and not pay. Now we're going to bring a different answer to the contradiction of the two statements of Rabbi Meir that we saw before. As we saw in our Mishnah, Rabbi Meir says that he's Tanakama. He said both Shomer Chinam and Shomer Sachar can just make a vow and do not have to pay. So he's a porter and he drops something. So you see that Rabbi Meir is considering in both cases them to be honest. Someone who stumbles is called honest, whereas in the other source that was back in Baba Kama, if someone drops an item and it breaks and he doesn't clean it up right away, so the Meir says he is liable because he's posheya. So he's not called that honest beyond his control, even though he tripped. You had to be more careful, and therefore you are liable. So the previous answer of Rabbi Elazar was that Tavra, we break the two opinions, and these are two different traditions about what Rabbi Meir said. They are not reconcilable. However, now we're going to see Rabbi Yochanan is going to reconcile them. Rabbi Chia bar Abba amar Rabbi Yochanan, שבועה זו תקנת חכמים היא, שמי אתה אומר כן, אין לך אדם המעביר חבית לחברו ממקום למקום. Rabbi Yochanan says, really, the law and the opinion of Rabbi Meir is as what we said in Baba Kama, that someone who stumbles and thereby causes something to break is responsible. That's negligent. You have to watch where you're going. Most people should be able to walk straight without stumbling and smashing things. So really, he should be liable, and really, therefore, the porter should be liable. If he's a shomer sachar, he should be liable. However, the rabbis came and made a takana to be more lenient, because if you're not going to be more lenient, no one will ever want to be a porter. No, you're never going to have a moving company. Nobody will want to move something from one to the other, because if they should trip and break, they're going to have to pay for the item, right? You're going to, can you move this artwork for me? Okay, I'll be a mover. I'll be very careful. If I trip and break, I have to pay $1 million for this special artwork. So nobody's ever going to want to do it. And therefore, the rabbis made a takana and said, you know what? Listen, if you trip and you break something that you're moving, even if you are shomer sachar and you're being paid, and really you should be liable, we're going to say just make a vow, and then you won't be liable. And so the Rabbi Meir could agree to both, right? If you're carrying your own things, your own jug, and you trip and it breaks, so then you're negligent. There's no takana for that case when you're carrying your own stuff, and you got to go make sure to clean it up right away. Whereas if you're moving things for others, so we want to encourage people to help and be movers, and therefore you say, oh, in that case, you're moving for others, okay, you don't have to pay, just make a vow. What vow does he make? He makes a vow. I did not smash it on purpose. I tripped. Right? What can I do? I didn't want to trip. Why would I want to trip? So then all you have to do is that, and then you don't have to pay. Now the rest of it we're just explaining both the other opinions in this, according to Rabbi Yochanan, in this line of thought, and they're the same as what we said before. There's no change in them, so we're just repeating all this. So Rabbi Yehuda comes and says, Rabbi Yehuda says we follow the regular law of any case that is geneva v'aveda, in which a shomer chinam swears and does not pay, and shomer sachar has to pay. Rabbi Elazar lemamar in Gemara Rabbi Meir mihu tameh ani im yocholim ze v'ze li shava. Yes, we heard a tradition like Rabbi Meir that both don't just make a vow and don't have to pay, but I am in wonderment about this, if you could say that, because I have 3 objections, same as before. I understand that shomer chinam, he can make a vow, he didn't break it on purpose. It was not totally negligent, but a shomer sachar, generally has to pay, unless it's honest. When it's not honest, so he should have to pay, and he can't get away with just a vow. So therefore, even if he's not negligent, he should have to pay. Even if he didn't do it on purpose or was totally negligent, still he should have to pay, because it doesn't go to the extent of being honest. And even though shomer chinam, he should only be allowed to make a vow and not pay if it was an incline, where he can say, well, this is difficult, I did my best, but what can I do? But if it's a straight path and no incline, then he's negligent, totally negligent, and he should have to pay. Can he make a vow that he was not negligent when he couldn't walk straight? And even in a case where it's on an incline, that's only if there were no one else around. So fine, then we tell him to make a vow and we'll believe your vow. But if there were witnesses around, so let him bring witnesses that in fact he was working carefully. Detanya isi ben Yehuda omer en ro'eh shevat Hashem tiyeh ben shenehem hayesh ro'eh yabish re'aya v'yipater, as Isi ben Yehuda said in a braita that a shomer chinam can only make a shavua when there's no one and there's no testimony. So he says, listen, I make a vow that I was not negligent. But if there is testimony, then he has to bring the testimony, and only then will he be exempt. So there's very few cases to be able to find within all this where a shomer chinam will be able to make a vow and not pay. And also, the problem of shomer sachar really should have to pay, and therefore to be Eliezer does not agree with this tradition from Rabbi Meir. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.